Anyway, thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure. I thought, from my perspective, I would talk about what attracted me first to Lower Manhattan and the financial district particularly, and some of the sort of a macroeconomic point of view down to the actual specific micro decisions that are made, which we can talk about this building and why it stayed commercial, and the various analyses we did to determine what use this would be. So in roughly, this building was purchased in March of '98, and at that point it looked like a very expensive purchase. It was about $135 a square foot. By today's standards, it would be a bargain, I would think. But one of the things when we got down here was to take a look at really I was looking at where does one invest. I'm in the real estate business, so I was going to continue to invest in real estate, but I wanted to look at put a business plan together and make a decision and focus on one thing and then carry it through, and until the paradigm changed, continue and grow from that perspective, which was a little bit unique. My grandfather, who was a major real estate investor, I know didn't sit and put together a business plan per se. I'm sure he had the intuitive idea, but not necessarily directly on paper. And when one does have to put thoughts on paper, from a blank piece of paper, it is glaring because you have to actually write something and think about it. So I wrote things that were important for me as an investor in real estate. I wanted to be in a large environment, right, where there was a secondary marketplace. So if the market went down, there would still be a lot of activity. We purchased a building in June of 1986 in Southern California in Long Beach. The rents today are no different than they were in 1986 when we bought the building, only the expenses have certainly risen. And part of that is because the size of that community isn't large enough in office space to keep an active market going. The tenants are merely stolen from one building to another building, but there's no real growth in there. So that would be something I didn't want to replicate in that. So I took a look at all these kind of things. So what did Lower Manhattan look like when I started looking? It was a third, at that time, largest concentration of office space in the United States. Midtown was first, Chicago was second, and Lower Manhattan was third. Today, some say that Washington, D.C. has surpassed that. But it's a big concentration, lots of activity, and a good secondary marketplace. So if the market went bad, you still have activity in tenants. So if you can perform as well as or better than the market, you have a chance to continue to lease. Second thing was there was a growing residential population. That was very important because one of the things that was commented about downtown is that at 5 o'clock nobody's here anymore. And that wasn't stimulating to the people that were working here. So with a growing residential population would come other things and much more of a 24-hour city. So that was something that was important. Interesting that on a per capita basis, okay, per zip code, Lower Manhattan here has the highest education rate per capita per zip code of anywhere in the United States, okay, both by day and by night. And there were two different populations, clearly. Also, it had the highest income per capita by day, which made sense. Wall Street was down here per zip code. And at the time, it had the highest income per capita per zip code by night. It's the first time in about 150 years that both by day and night it was in the same location in the United States for income generation. Today, I think we're about third. Mountain View, California is number one. I think in the Upper East Side now, with all the zip code changes, one of those zip codes up there is the highest. But clearly, the wealth and education was sitting here. Tourism, Broad and Wall Street, I think, has the second highest tourist population in Manhattan behind Times Square. Okay? Retail, it had the highest income production for retail per square foot for sales anywhere in the world, right? Was the World Trade Center. More dollars per square foot were generated there than anywhere else on earth. Hotel, one of the highest occupancies was in Lower Manhattan, and on and on and on. And yet, when you came here, there was it was number one in every category, and everybody's perception was that, this was barren and it had problems and it didn't have any of those kind of statistics. So what I saw was there was a big arbitrage. There was reality and the perception. And usually, as a developer, you're trying to change the perception, not necessarily with reality, but with marketing and ideas, and convince people that a new paradigm is really existing, and then it hopefully fulfills itself. Here it was the opposite. This had everything already, and yet the perception was it didn't. Number one big issue here, that if you asked every commercial broker, was the biggest problem in Lower Manhattan was transportation. Okay? Yet, there's more railroad track here per square foot than anywhere else on Earth. So if you have more transportation, why was it considered terrible? And yet you could get everywhere from Lower Manhattan. You get anywhere on the east side, the west side, New Jersey, Brooklyn, all over. And it's the only point that you can do that, really. And yet everybody said it was terrible. Well, what they weren't looking at really was the difference between a delivery system, right, new stations, Grand Central stations, and transportation. Transportation was here. Our delivery system wasn't so good. So after 9/11, what happened? All of the delivery systems, if you will, were recreated. So you have a brand new Staten Island ferry terminal. Beautiful, done. You have a Battery Park ferry terminal under construction. You have the PATH station under construction. And you have the Fulton Street transit station under construction. Each one of those roughly was about the largest individual project, transportation hub project in the U.S. All three of them, with the fourth being the Staten Island ferry, all were in Manhattan. Three of them were connected together or will be connected together. And that's extraordinary. You'll have a one-seat ride to Newark Airport. Eventually, hopefully, have a one-seat ride to Kennedy. All here. So what we did is we took the greatest transportation system, and now we put the greatest delivery system. So for me, if transportation, we live on an island, right? So one of the biggest issues is how do you get people on and off an island and get them around the island safely, quickly, efficiently, and hopefully comfortably. So if a commodity, and I believe that's one of the most important things for locations in New York, is transportation hubs. Penn Station, phenomenal. Grand Central Station. It didn't come about because people liked the area necessarily. It came about because it was very convenient to all the transportation. So if a commodity of transportation is, in my opinion, very critical to living on an island, and this had more of it than anywhere else, I think that would be a good place to invest. So it was number one in all these categories, and that was what started to attract me. And then after what happened at 9/11, I went and redoubled all my efforts for acquisition because there was a huge problem. Values decreased, but all of the goodness was still here. The residential population was still increasing. And then we had an opportunity to go recreate all of the transportation delivery systems and everything else. Some $16 billion of public money was pouring into Lower Manhattan. Every pipe south of Chambers Street, correct me if I'm wrong, Liz, but was replaced after 9/11. Every water main pipe, every water pipe, every telecommunications pipe in Con Edison. So you have a brand new infrastructure underground. You've got brand new transportation hubs coming around. You've got a rising residential population. You have more schools being built here than any other district. And it goes on and on and on. Then, what do you have? You're going to have the World Trade Center Memorial, where already we had a huge tourist population, right? So you now put that there. The amount of tourists that are going to come into that is going to be extraordinary. And we have a little tiny island of Hawaii where Pearl Harbor is that gets millions and millions of visitors because it's one of the few places that we were attacked by foreigners in this country. Now you have one of the most convenient places, Manhattan, and one of the most sought-after places to visit with a memorial there. So now you're going to have a massive tourist population. And it just keeps getting better, and people kept not knowing that. And I would really liken it to Times Square. Everybody, in the 1980s, early 1980s, said Times Square was a terrible place to be. It was, dirty, and it was crime-ridden, etc. Then they went and built all these buildings, and everybody said it's